What's up everyone, welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway Night Race Edition, which I feel like this is our third one in a row. Not that I'm complaining, I do enjoy them, it's just throwing me off a little bit. And if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. You'll also find me live on Sunday mornings breaking down the entire slate and answering any questions you guys may end up having. But since this is a later race, around a 7 p.m. start time, I'm planning on going live around 5 p.m. So hopefully I'll see you all there and looking forward to a good time. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, the only thing I ask in return is leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you are new, and feel free to leave a comment down below. Be nice, be mean, I don't really care either way, but I'd love to hear from you. And also I do have to mention the sponsors of the show, Prize Picks and Underdog, because they do make these videos possible. And as of right now on either site, promo code CPEM will get you instant deposit match bonus up to $100. It is free money. Use it to your advantage. There's no strings attached. Just use the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. All right, so moving on to the strategy portion of this video. It can be kind of tricky at Atlanta because yes, it is a super speedway. It's a drafting track, but that does not mean we should build the same exact way as we do at Daytona or Talladega. Now, my ranking of chaos for the super speedways is pretty much Daytona's up here, Talladega's down here, then Atlanta, I think it's going to be somewhere down here. I feel like it's a tamer Talladega, so that's how I'm putting my lineups. And at Talladega, that's where I do tend to roster drivers starting closer to the front. Daytona, pretty much usually just full on stack the back because we're losing half the field pretty much every single time. Talladega, that can be hit or miss, and we do see guys starting closer to the front, tend to be in the optimal lineup more often. And then for Atlanta, we have seen the front row workout before. We saw the 1-2 workout, led some laps, optimal, won the race, Chase Elliott last year. Then just in the spring, we saw Joey Logano on the pole, started first, led 140 laps, I believe, and he won the race. So we only have a 3-race sample size, so it's hard to say we learned too much because if anyone's ever taken the statistics class, that's obviously not enough of a sample size to really drive too much from. But it's what we have to work with right now. So given that we're running the Super Speedway package, yes, place differential is going to be important. Guys can wreck out. We've seen it before, but I don't think this is going to be a race where we lose half the field. Now, I'm not sure how stupid these guys are going to drive. Obviously, they've said that the car is easier to handle now. So we'll see. But I mean, we got to adjust with what we've seen so far, and we have seen the pole sitter have a bit of an advantage. So maybe if a guy like Blaney's starting in the pole, I don't think we have to cross him out like we would at Daytona. If you can lead 100 laps to win the race, yeah, you're going to be in the optimal lineup. So we'll have to see how qualifying goes. That's going to take place in a couple minutes. And once we talk driver by driver, we'll have that all broken down. So I hate to say too much before we know anything about qualifying, but just know I'm kind of building as a more tame Talladega. So if you remember how we built lineups for Talladega, it'll probably end up looking pretty similar to that. And moving on to the driver by driver breakdown here, I do have to mention one thing first. And yes, of course, Patreon is still running their free week trial. So if you want to sign up, check out all the projections, sim scores, optimizer, ownership projections, the Discord community, everything on there. And I do cover other sports as well. So if you want to come in, check it out for free, completely free. Link down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. If you like it, you can stay. If not, well, you can tell me to screw up. I don't really care either way. But for the couple hundred of you that are over on the Patreon, I truly do appreciate it. All right, so getting into it here, qualifying just ended a few moments ago. No practice this weekend, which we never have at the super speedways anyway, and it would be irrelevant. So don't have to worry about practice. And this is my first time going through the entire slate with you guys. So my first initial reactions, and I know I said this is kind of like a tamish Talladega, the way we're building lineups. But I was not expecting a lot of good cars starting in the absolute back. As you can see, dark red on some of these big name drivers, Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain. So these might end up looking a little Daytona-ish. But when I said like a Talladega or a tamer Talladega, I meant like I'm not really focusing on the absolute bumps in the back. Like I know at Daytona, we're always rostering B.J. McLeod, Cody Ware, those kind of guys. That wasn't really my plan heading into the weekend. And as you can see, some of these big names did soak up the back. So going to be some interesting roster construction. There's going to be a lot of chalk, which we know chalk at super speedways can always be a bit of a bad way to go. But Atlanta's a little bit different, so it's going to be a confusing week. But let's break it all down here. So we'll start up top with the man, Kyle Busch, $10,500. FanDuel messed up their pricing so bad this weekend. They priced it pretty much as a regular 1.5 mile track. Like Larson's the most expensive and he's awful at super speedways. Then you have Truex, who also isn't very good at super speedways. He's the second most expensive, then Byron. So they completely messed up their pricing. So build whatever lineup you want over there. DraftKings definitely looks a bit more appropriate compared to what the odds are this weekend. But either way, Kyle Busch, he's starting in 22nd, so he's definitely going to have some ownership. He does make sense for place differential here. Starting mid-pack, this is a very similar position he was in at Talladega. And I was a big fan of Kyle Busch at Talladega. Actually had a bet on him to win. I believe it was at plus 1,800. Played him in DFS. It was a little bit lower owned because some of the other guys were chalkier, starting further in the back. But ended up winning that race. And overall at Super Speedways this year, I mean, he's definitely had a lot of speed. I know some of the numbers at Atlanta for him aren't that pretty, but you can't really just look at finishes, especially in a 3-race sample size, and really drive too much from that. But if you're looking at the 9-race sample size for him in the next-gen car at Super Speedways, honestly, doesn't look too bad. And in RCR, he's obviously been very good at them, pretty much up front every single time we're at one. So I think he makes sense for tournaments. Not sure how to get there in cash games, but I mean, he is playable in cash. I'm just not sure, depending on money-wise, if it'll work out. But yes, he is definitely playable. Chase Elliott, $10,400, pretty cheap on FanDuel. He's going to make a lot of sense over there. He's starting in 23rd, and he is pretty much the same exact play as Kyle Busch. When the books opened odds, him and Busch were the odds-on favorite to win this race, and they're basically the same exact plays in DFS. And Chase Elliott's dominated here before. He won this race. He was starting on the pole, but as you can see, in a 2-race sample size at Atlanta, has a win, 2 top 10s, and obviously a good chunk of dominator points, and he's also a very polished super speedway racer. So Chase Elliott definitely makes sense here, but just really I would probably have similar ownership on both these guys. Kyle Larson, $10,200, the most expensive driver over on FanDuel for I don't know why. But he's starting in 8th here, and I would just much rather play guys like Elliott and Busch, and I would rather play Joey Logano, just all better super speedway drivers, because Larson just has a terrible track record at the drafting track. So you can look at his recent track history here at Atlanta, 3-race sample size, but average finish of 24th, and 1 top 15 to show for it. And a 9-race sample size in the next-gen car, these types of tracks, only has 1 top 10 in 9 races and an average of 3.1 DraftKings points per race, because he always starts up front and he always tends to crash out. So I'll be passing on Kyle Larson. Joey Logano, amazing at super speedways, obviously dominated this race in the spring. Started on the pole at 140 laps, won the race. And starting in 4th, I wouldn't be too surprised if he did something similar. I'm not sure he's going to lead that many laps again, but he's obviously going to be a contender to win. And over on FanDuel, again, just cheap, $10,000. And there's no reason he should be $4,000 cheaper than Kyle Larson over there. So just much easier to get to Logano over Larson on FanDuel. And on either side, I do prefer him. And then dropping down to the 9K range, we have Denny Hamlin, who I do have a bet on to win this race, which I should mention my bets now. I don't know if any of them has changed, but they're all small bets. Besides, I do have Ford to win at plus 160. That's 1 unit. But then I have like half unit, quarter unit, even less than a quarter unit bets on a few of these guys, Denny Hamlin being one. But I have Blaney at 1,200, Denny Hamlin at 1,400, Bell at 1,600, and then Harvick at 35, which last I saw he went down to 25, and after a good qualifying round, that's probably going to get even lower. But just putting on the table, that's who I have the bet, and I'm not really changing anything else. But Denny Hamlin here starting in 14th. I think you can put him in the same boat as like Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch did run decently well here in the spring, but not really much to say. I mean, it's a super speedway. We don't have much to dive in like practice-wise because we don't have any, and green flag speed means nothing at super speedways. So you just hope he doesn't wreck, and if he doesn't, I mean, Hamlin should be a top 5 contender, and he's got a really good-looking car this weekend in that Coca-Cola car, which does look really good. Ryan Blaney, not sure why he's this cheap. He's just the absolute man at super speedways, and on FanDuel, he is free at $9,500. Obviously, starting in the front row does make him very risky because he's going to basically have to win the race or finish second or lead a lot of laps and finish in the top 3 for this to work out, especially because in this 9K range, you have all these guys with place differential upside like Brad Keselowski, William Byron, Denny Hamlin. But Blaney could definitely win this race, so if you are playing him, that means he pretty much has to win. So I'll have to see what my sims say, give him for the win rate potential. I believe before I ran sims pre-qualifying, I think he was around 8 to 9%, so that's probably going to be somewhat close to what I have him in lineups. Maybe just a little bit more if you factor in some dominator upside, but it shouldn't be too much more than that. William Byron, $9,500. He's starting in 18th. So it looks like Fords definitely have the best cars. A lot of these Chevys do have quite a bit of place differential, but William Byron has dominated here before. The problem with Byron is that he just tends to wreck a lot at these racetracks for some reason. But starting in 18th, I mean, again, just hate to keep saying the same thing, but there's really not much that separates these cars at super speedways. They just have to avoid wrecks. So throw Byron in the same category as Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Busch. He's just the cheapest of the bunch so far. And then we have two major chalk plays here, Ross Chastain and Christopher Bell. Bell has ran well at Atlanta, did have that one race where he got the penalty at the end where he went from like 3rd to 21st or something like that. And Ross Chastain has obviously had a great race where he finished 2nd, led some laps as well. That was last year. But both these guys are major chalk plays. They're fairly priced, I think. So if you're playing cash games, you're loading up on them. In tournaments, it makes sense to pivot. I mean, you could pivot to guys like Brett Keselowski, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, all these guys, because they're not going to have nearly as much ownership. But if you're playing cash games, it makes a ton of sense. Brett Keselowski, he is free on FanDuel. Do not understand the pricing over there this weekend. $7,500. So I'm not really sure what happened with the pricing over there, but I mean, Keselowski is one of the absolute best plate racers. He ran well here earlier in the spring. So starting in 11th, I mean, I like him a lot for tournaments. He's definitely your best pivot off of guys like Ross Chastain and Christopher Bell because he has race winning upside and he offers you a little bit of place differential. And he's kind of in that dead zone. And really all these drivers from Reddick and Keselowski, they're on that dead zone where they're going to be lower owned. It doesn't seem like a bad idea to be overweight in tournaments. So instead of breaking each and every single one of these guys down thoroughly, I mean, let's just throw them all in the same group. Rex isn't exactly the best plate racer, but recently he has had a pretty good stretch of luck at finishing well at super speedways. Chris Buescher, I mean, again, he is super cheap with Brad Keselowski, but he's in a Ford. They seem to be really fast this weekend. He did run very well at Atlanta earlier in the year. So, I mean, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't like Buescher in tournaments, especially if he's going to go overlooked, because all these guys, they're in a dead zone, first off, with their starting positions. I mean, these guys are always just going to be lower owned at these types of tracks as everyone chases place differential. But also, if you look at the pricing, they are just sandwiched in between place differential. Like, they're the meat of this place differential sandwich here because you have Chastain and Bell in the 30s. Then you have also Bowman and Bubba Wallace starting absolutely dead last. So that's where everyone's going to flock for ownership. So this is a really good range for tournaments because they're just not going to be owned. And all these guys do have top 5 potential. Bubba Wallace starting dead last. He is one of the absolute best plate racers in all of NASCAR. And he's starting last, just couldn't get a qualifying lap in. Had an issue. But as long as it doesn't wreck, he's going to be a top 10, top 15 contender. And at $8,300 on both sites, $8,200 on FanDuel, it's just hard to avoid. So he is a cash game lock. Alex Bowman, same category, although he can be a little bit hit or miss at super speedways. Seems like he wrecks a lot, but at the same time, he has top 15 potential, and that's all you can ask for. $8,100 starting at 36. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at $7,900. Again, just free on FanDuel. Really don't understand some of the pricing over there this week. But he can be more wreckers or checkers. Does already have a win under his belt at Daytona this year, so maybe he's not going to be as aggressive. But, I mean, Ricky's fine. He's starting in nearly 30th place, and he's a good plate racer, so this is one of his chances to show out. Although he's had a pretty good year so far. I mean, he's definitely been able to string together some top 15s when people wouldn't really expect it, just to hold his ground. Starting position-wise at other tracks. But, yeah, he's going to be interesting here, but not going to be as high owned as he usually would at this starting position at a plate track just because we have Wallace and Bowman right above him, which they are going to project better just about everywhere, I would assume. Then dropping down to Kevin Harvick here at $7,800. A little bit more expensive over on FanDuel. One of those things where I think they probably could have flipped the pricing with somebody else. But he's starting in 6th. Do have that small bet on him to win at plus 3,500. But starting in 6th, it's going to be tough to get to him. Obviously, only a tournament play. I wouldn't even think about it in cash games. You just kind of have to hope he has a clean race and finishes basically top 3 for this to work out because he's going to be battling all this place differential. So first off, you need the place differential to bust. They need him to have a perfectly clean race and finish inside the top 5. So it's a pretty tough path for Harvick. And I'll tell you right now, my Sims are not going to like him because they're going to be eating up Wallace, Bowman, and Ricky. So going to have a tough time getting the Harvick, maybe just a sprinkle of ownership. Same can be said for Ty Gibbs. Eric Almirola, it's tough. I know the pole sitter has done well here in 2 out of 3 races, but he is right beside Ryan Blaney, who's one of the best in the field at these types of tracks. You have Joey Logano right behind him. So it's going to be tough for him to control the race. I don't see Eric Almirola winning, so I'm probably not going to get there. Like, if this was Blaney on the pole, it's different because, I mean, of his track record. I'm not saying Almirola is a bad plate racer. It's just I don't see him being as dominant. Now, he did run well at Atlanta prior to a wreck earlier in the season, but again, it's going to be a tough path for Eric here. If he was starting outside the top 5, I think that'd make him a decent tournament play, but on the pole, I mean, there's absolutely zero room for error here. Austin Cindric, $7,300. He's starting in 10th. Penske should run well. We saw it earlier in the season, and they just always do with these types of tracks, so I think he's in the tournament pool, but that's about as far as I would go, and I would say he's barely in the tournament pool because you have guys like Daniel Suarez and Eric Jones who both should have top 15 potential here, and they have place differential. So Suarez starting 26 at Atlanta, 3-race sample size here in the new Atlanta, I should say. He's got 2 top 10s, average finish at 13th, and averaging just under 40 DraftKings points per race. So with the place differential here, I think he makes sense on either site. Eric Jones, great plate racer, 3-race sample size, finished in the top 15 each and every single time. Finished 8th here earlier in the season. Just love him at super speedways. So Eric Jones, I like him here at 25th. I think he's a great tournament play. Dropping down to the 6K range, we have AJ Allmendinger starting at 19th. Has 1 race here, finished 16th. I mean, he's kind of in a dead spot here, starting at 19th, where he's exactly mid-pack pretty much. So I wouldn't say he's going to offer you a ton of upside, but the ownership will be low. Michael McDowell, another good plate racer, although as Atlanta so far, 3-race sample size, average finish at 20th. So I wouldn't say, I mean, he's basically the same play as AJ Allmendinger, so I'm not going to go on my way to play him. Corey LaJoie, $6,500. Now, he is someone we definitely have to have interest here. At Atlanta, almost won a race here before Chase Elliott bullied him out of the way and won the race, but he's starting in 28th. And, I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, he had the issue. We're talking about probably 3 top 10s, maybe 3 top 5s for Corey LaJoie in a 3-race sample size here at Atlanta, average finish of 10th place. So starting in 28th, I mean, this is just a great track for him, and this is like his one shot to win a race, to punch his ticket. So I do like Corey LaJoie here quite a bit. I think you can even play him in cash games. Austin Dillon starting in 33rd, just talking place differential here. He's not actually a bad plate racer, so I don't mind him. I mean, he's just a fine cash play in the back. Although I think I would prefer Corey LaJoie here. We'll have to see how ownership goes, but I guess if I had to pick one of these guys, I think I would give the edge to LaJoie, just from how good he's ran in Atlanta. Chase Briscoe starting in 3rd, kind of in the same boat as Eric Almirola, basically has to win the race, so I'm going to have a tough time getting to Briscoe. Ryan Preece, just in a dead spot here, starting in 13th. I just don't really see him having too much upside here. We have a 3-race sample size for him in the next-gen car at Super Speedways. Average finish of 32nd. It just hasn't been too pretty for him. He is in a Ford, and they should have some speed. Stuart Haas looked fast overall, obviously, but I mean, he's going to have to finish probably in the top 8, and he's going to have some of this place differential flop. So, really tough path for Ryan Preece. Austin Hill, $5,900. He's starting in 32nd. He is a pretty good plate racer. He is in the 62 car for Beard Motorsports this weekend, which we know they can have speed at these types of tracks. I'm not saying it's the best car in the world, but all you really need to do is avoid carnage, and he's fine at that price point, especially starting all the way back in 32nd. And on FanDuel, he's $2,500. So, I mean, he's absolutely free over there. Justin Haley could be a good tournament play. Pretty good plate racer. 3-race sample size here. Average finish of 13th with 2 top 15s. So I don't mind him for tournaments. Obviously, wouldn't get there in cash games. Cole Custer's back, unfortunately. He's starting in 21st. I hate this guy. Just constant pain with him. He's in a Rick Ware car, which is never pretty. I mean, maybe if he was starting in the 30s, I'd have interest, but I just don't really see the upside starting in 21st. Noah Gragson in 31st here. Just probably would have more interest if this was like a Daytona, but I mean, he hasn't exactly been the best plate racer so far, has gotten some issues. He has been at Atlanta 3 times, average finish at 25th. If you're looking at the next-gen car in general for him, we have a 9-race sample size, average finish at 24th, running position not too far behind. I mean, anybody and everybody could have a good race once in a while on a super speedway, so it wouldn't surprise me if Gragson hit the optimal, if he just happened to finish 14th or something, but I don't think it's the most likely scenario. Todd Gillen, Harrison Burton kind of priced themselves out here for where they started, both inside the top 10. Like, we play these guys if they're starting in the 20s as good tournament pivots off of some chalkier big names that have place differential, but for where they're starting, I mean, I just don't really see the upside here, unfortunately. And both are fine plate racers. I was okay with playing them when the week started, but for where they're starting now, it just makes it really tough. And then Ty Dillon, JJ Yaley, BJ McLeod. If this was Daytona or even Talladega, I'd have more interest, but Atlanta here, I don't really see myself going that route. But with that being said, guys, I think that's all I have for you this weekend. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Don't forget, I will be live on Sunday around 5 p.m. Eastern, so hopefully I see you all there. And don't forget, you can get your free week of Patreon, access all the extra content over there, projections, optimizer, all that fun stuff. Link is down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. Just make sure you take advantage of it. And I wish you all the best of luck, because let's be honest, we're going to need it this week, and I'll see you all next time.